Welcome to the Economic Development Committee of the Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce. Today, we are going to have the city present an economic development or an industrial preservation and optimization policy action plan. So we're excited to hear about that. Why don't we quickly introduce ourselves that are on the panelists here. My name is Rick Kent. I'm the chair of the Economic Development Committee for the Chamber. Steve?
I'm Steve Tate, retired guy and a Chamber ambassador.
I'm newly joining that retired guy status.
Yes, you are. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Nick?
Good morning, gang. Sorry, I'm having system problems this morning. I'm Nick Gage, President and CEO of the Morgan Hill Chamber.
And Matt?
Good morning, Matt Mahood, Director, Economic Development Director of City of Morgan Hill.
Graciano?
Thank you. Good morning, Graciano Mendoza, Vice President of Admin Services at Gavilan College. Pleasure to be with you.
You're welcome. And Brittany?
Good morning, everyone. Brittany Sherman, City of Morgan Hill Economic Development Coordinator.
Okay, and with that, Matt, do you want to take it away?
Absolutely. Good morning, everybody. It's great to see you. I need the host to enable my screen sharing.
There you go, Matt.
Great, thank you very much. And let's make sure I got the right PowerPoint coming up.
There we go.
And 1 second. You guys see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, excellent. So good morning, everybody. Matt Mahood, Economic Development Director, City of Morgan Hill. And this morning, I'm going to talk to you about industrial preservation and the city's plan on industrial preservation. Before I do that, I do want to take the opportunity to share with you just some quick updates to make sure that the Morgan Hill Chamber is engaged with us on some important discussions that are happening in the coming week and months. So first of all, two important agenda items that are coming up next week, Wednesday, January 19th at the City Council meeting. The downtown traffic calming and Monterey Road lane reduction and place branding beautification project is coming to the City Council. This has been months and months and months of work by city staff, a working group. Key stakeholders have engaged in this project. The staff report is being circulated now. We've shared it with many of the key stakeholders, the City Council, the working group, the Planning Commission. And we'd love to have the engagement of the Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce and our community in the discussion on Wednesday, January 19th on this important topic. So remind you to please join us and engage in this conversation on the 19th. The second agenda item, and this will probably be first up in the agenda on next Wednesday, is new and updated fees for planning and land development engineering. I just encourage the Morgan Hill Chamber to continue to keep an eye on fees that are updated as it relates to development, and we will keep you posted as these things come along, but we want to make sure that these are within your, just in your scope, and making sure you're paying attention to what's happening at City Council in regard to these increased fees. The second thing, or actually I guess it's the third thing, is the Morgan Hill Climate Action Plan. This action plan was adopted by the City Council last month, the last City Council meeting in December. This action plan was adopted unanimously by the City Council. However, I would encourage the Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce to take a look at the action plan. There are impacts to our business community within the action plan. And candidly, the devil will be in the details. Morgan Hill wants to be a leader in environmental sustainability. However, that does come with a cost to business. So I would encourage you to read the action plan and then pay attention as items come forward to actually implement the plan to make sure that you're engaged and you're involved, not only yourself, but the businesses within Morgan Hill. And then the last thing is the Choose Morgan Hill monthly e-newsletter. Brittany did a great job of getting this out in December, getting it out to our business community. It was sent to all the businesses in our business license database and to many of our stakeholders. I would encourage you to sign up for the newsletter. Raise your hand. Did you receive the newsletter? Did you see it? You're all supposed to be raising your hands right now. If you did not receive the newsletter, I encourage you to go to Choose Morgan Hill, go to the website there, and you can sign up to receive the monthly newsletter. Okay, that's my commercial for economic development and engagement for the Morgan Hill Chamber. So let me jump into the industrial preservation work plan. And this work plan has been in the works for quite a long time. But let me give you a brief history as to how and why we got here. In 2017, as you all know, Morgan Hill approved the economic blueprint. And the economic blueprint has served as our beacon within the Office of Economic Development, guiding our work. And our focus has really been within 4 industry areas: innovation and advanced manufacturing, retail, tourism, and healthcare. And that work continues today. Within the economic blueprint, it's a specific action plan. There's obviously the 4 core industries that I just mentioned that are focused, but there's 13 strategies and 35 specific actions that should be taking place over the course of the life of the economic blueprint. 2 things that I want to call out within the blueprint. Action 1 was adopting an employment or an industrial land preservation policy. And action 2 was to strengthen the general plan language to prevent conversion of industrial lands. So the actions that the City Council is taking now, or considering taking, are actions that the City Council actually agreed that we should be taking a look at when they approved the economic blueprint in 2017. So why industrial preservation? Why is it important? First of all, it's all about becoming and maintaining economic sustainability for the city. Second, how do you do that? You create jobs and you create revenue for the city. The third is you maintain your industrial lands for job generating uses. You do not let those lands be converted to commercial or mixed use or to residential lands. You maintain them for job generating uses. And then the last thing is you prevent incompatible uses. You want to make sure that you're not putting uses that are not compatible with a heavy industrial use next to those uses or within your business park. So you want to maintain those employment lands and make sure that the compatible uses are next to each other. So just a brief history and a high-level overview of industrial preservation meetings and action history. In 2020, the City of Morgan Hill and the Office of Economic Development, John Lang, coordinated a series of meetings and workshops with ULI, the Urban Land Institute, with Silicon Valley Economic Development Alliance, and with the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission workshops actually occurred in September of 2020 and in March of 2021. And those workshops focused on the need for industrial preservation and what does it mean and how do you engage it. In October of 2020, the City Council took action by amending its zoning code to prohibit e-commerce uses. And this is an important conversation because we'll talk more about that. And then in April 2021, the City Council adopted an urgency ordinance that prevented additional warehousing and distribution by building form. So the City Council has already taken some action to address e-commerce, warehouse, and distribution, both by zoning code and by building form. And we'll talk more about that in a second. So within the studies by ULI and Silicon Valley Economic Development Alliance, the city engaged with a consultant, Strategic Economics, and they did a study. And they did a study on industrial and retail. But specifically within the industrial findings, they came up with some key findings within their report. Morgan Hill continues to be an attractive destination for industrial users. Morgan Hill Ranch and Madrone Business Parks continue to be the strongest location for future industrial R&D and warehouses. Demand for industrial buildings has outpaced building supply for manufacturing, machining, and assembly businesses. Morgan Hill firms have left to expand elsewhere due to lack of industrial space availability. And I think the biggest example of that is Belladine. And then new construction is expensive and takes approximately 2 years to complete via planning, permitting, and construction. And what we're seeing is that users don't want to wait those 2 years. They actually want to come into a ready building and take the space immediately. The next important findings within the strategic economic study, and this is key, vacant industrial land supply can accommodate 25 to 165 years of projected demand. This is when they did their study in 2020. But when you currently look at entitled projects that are considered, like Redwood Tech 101, the available land horizon drops to 19 to 95 years. That may seem like a really long time, but 19 years isn't that long. Many of us won't be around in 95 years, at least in this shape or form. But this time can quickly be diminished as we use our industrial lands. Today, there are 120 acres of industrial land remaining vacant. However, 27.5 acres of that land is Redwood Tech 101. And the reason we keep that in the 120 acres currently is because although it's planned and permitted, it's not built yet. And we don't count it until it's built. So that leaves us really with 86.5 acres of light industrial land within our business parks and only 6 acres of general industrial, which general industrial is your heaviest industrial uses or your dirtiest uses. So within the workshops that we did with ULI and Silicon Valley Economic Development Alliance, we had experts, we had subject matter experts tell us what are the best ways to preserve your industrial land. And the first way to really make sure you preserve it is to use it. Make sure you use them for industrial purposes. The second is revisit your general plan language and remove or replace the word discourage with the word prohibit the conversion of industrial land. The third is to limit discretion of conditional use permits within employment generating lands. So do not allow conditional uses within those lands. And we'll talk a little bit more about that within the zoning code shortly. Hold the line, prioritize wanted uses such as original equipment manufacturers, right? Brand, market, and promote the industrial parks. So this is tell the story of why Morgan Hill is a great place to do business, a great place to live, quality of life, a great place for employees, and tell the story. And this is where we can partner with the Chamber of Commerce. Incentivize industrial development. We should explore how fee structures and taxes align with land use and try to incentivize continued industrial park expansion. Allow for mixed uses within industrial. So we need to consider office or other uses, but make sure that those uses are compatible with the uses next door. And then lastly, consider post-COVID-19 uses. The pandemic may create new products or uses that are currently not articulated in city codes. So we need to be flexible to allow industries and new operations, but keeping in mind that those new industries and operations, they need to be compatible with existing uses. So what actions has the city taken to date? In April 2021, the City Council passed the Urgency Ordinance 2320. So this identified, really addressed by, sorry, I jumped too far ahead. The first action the city took was in November 2020, where the City Council adopted Ordinance 2317, amending the city's industrial zoning code, prohibiting fulfillment centers, defining large-scale projects, and moving review and approval authority from city staff to the Planning Commission. So essentially, they prohibited fulfillment centers, sorting centers, last-mile local distribution. Then it defined large projects as anything over 100 units of residential or any building over 75,000 square feet. And large projects now require a public hearing, and that review and approval needs to go through the Planning Commission. So this is how the city addressed concerns that the community had about fulfillment centers, sorting centers, last mile distribution, e-commerce distribution via the zoning code. The second action the city took was in April of 2020. They passed an urgency ordinance, and this is where they addressed the concerns of the community via building type. So they changed and created definitions for dock height door to square foot ratio, ceiling height, and defined light manufacturing. So this created maximum dock height door ratio for a facility that has a floor area of 75,000 square feet or greater and a ceiling height of more than 34 feet over 25% of the floor area, and allows one dock height door for every 25,000 square feet. So essentially eliminating or reducing the ability to have a warehouse or distribution e-commerce sorting facility by building type. So our work plan that we've been looking at, the city of Morgan Hill, over the last several months, going back to October of last year, is really a three-part plan that we're bringing forward. It deals with the industrial ordinance, it deals with the industrial preservation policy, and it deals with zoning cleanup. And I won't go into the details of the slide because we're going to jump into that here in just a second. But it's a three-part plan that we're moving forward, and they all work together. The first is the industrial ordinance. And as you know, on April 7th, 2021, as I said earlier, the city of Morgan Hill, the city council placed the RG4MH, or the Responsible Growth for Morgan Hill initiative, on the ballot, and then adopted the collaborative ordinance as an urgency ordinance that I spoke about earlier, addressing the building form and the three-pronged approach to building form, and then directed Planning Commission to review the collaborative ordinance as a permanent ordinance and consider placement on the ballot. So our next step in that process, here we are almost approaching a year later. In February, the city council will consider the industrial ordinance once again. We will be bringing forward the same urgency ordinance that the city council previously adopted, addressing the maximum dock height door ratio and the 75,000 square foot building, the ceiling height of 34 feet over 25% of the area, and maintaining that ratio of one dock height door for 25,000 square feet. So within that code, it changes again, the dock height door to square foot ratio, the ceiling height, and addresses the definition for light manufacturing. So there are no changes in the urgency ordinance coming forward. This will be heard at the Planning Commission on February, first meeting in February. And we anticipate the Planning Commission adopting this ordinance and bringing the ordinance to the City Council at its first meeting in the month of March. So there are no changes, and we will adopt this ordinance at least from a staff recommendation standpoint. The next step is our industrial preservation policy. This is where we get into the how do you actually preserve and optimize your industrial land. So staff is recommending the adoption of an industrial preservation and optimization policy. So in conjunction with the planning, the zoning ordinance, the general plan, and the economic blueprint, we anticipate this policy will support long-term economic vitality. It identifies 5 goals that provide direction and guidance when implementing economic development strategies in the zoning code and general plan as they relate to industrial uses. And then it supports amending the current zoning code to minimize and reduce incompatible uses. So how do you do that? You define and you prioritize your work. And it's really a 5-part policy. 1, we want to encourage the attraction and expansion of R&D, office, and advanced manufacturing uses. We've talked about that in the economic blueprint, but we want to make sure that we codify this in a policy that says this is our #1 priority for Morgan Hill within our industrial uses. 2, prohibit standalone e-commerce, warehouse, and distribution uses. So we're making sure that we take a stand and we confirm that that is our policy as a city. 3rd, we prohibit general plan conversions of industrial land that cause a net loss of industrial employment lands. So we prohibit it. We follow the guidance of our subject matter experts, and we change the word to prohibit. 4, we protect existing industrial lands and business parks by prohibiting non-compatible uses such as community assembly and recreational uses while expanding compatible uses. And I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute. And the last is encourage conversion of commercial lands to industrial lands where appropriate. As you know, we're under a lot of pressure from the state to continue to build new residential. There are opportunities where developers may come in and look at commercial land that is underutilized, and they may want to try to convert it to residential. As a preemptive strike on that, we should be taking the other approach and be looking at how do we convert those underutilized commercial lands to industrial lands where appropriate and the compatible uses are nearby. So it's really a 5-part strategy. The 5-part strategy is supported by the economic blueprint. It's supported by the general plan policies and action plans as well. So the strategy of how do you implement this policy? The first bullet item, encourage, attract, expansion of R&D office and advanced manufacturing. This is really about marketing, messaging, and outreach development to create incentive programs. So you got to work, this is economic development at its best. This is where we can partner with the Chamber of Commerce to assist us in marketing and messaging and make sure that we're attracting the right type of users that we want into our industrial lands. The second, prohibit standalone e-commerce, warehouse, and distribution uses. This will be addressed through the industrial ordinance and through the zoning code. So this will be a city council, a planning commission, and a city council action. Prohibit the general plan conversions of industrial lands that cause a net loss of industrial employment lands. This is addressed through a general plan amendment. Protect existing industrial lands and business parks by prohibiting non-compatible uses and such as community assembly and recreational uses while expanding compatible uses. This is addressed through the zoning code. And then encourage conversion of commercial lands to industrial lands. Again, this is through marketing, through messaging and outreach, and then looking at those opportunities, and then the city initiating those general plan conversions, working with our partners on the real estate and the development side. So when we talk about, so the next step in that 3-part approach is the zoning code cleanup. Easy for me to say. So we look at addressing and implementing the industrial preservation and optimization policy through the zoning code updates. And the zoning code updates are not that complicated. We've had 2 different workshops with the Planning Commission, both in September of 2020 and again in March of 2021. And the idea is to look at minimizing and reduce incompatible uses within the industrial zoning area, minimize conditional use permits in industrial zoned areas, and then expand opportunities for medical, office, and healthcare. As you remember, you look back at the economic blueprint, we do talk about healthcare as a priority industry that we want to continue to expand. So we want to make sure that our zoning code matches our priorities as well. So here's the zoning code changes that staff is recommending. Let me just jump through this really quick. This chart can be a little bit overwhelming when you first see it. The zoning code is online and you can very easily Google search the zoning codes within the city of Morgan Hill. It's all available on the internet. So this is just a quick graphic of the zoning code within industrial zoned land. And this is just a snippet of the various uses that are within all of the uses of the city of Morgan Hill. So general industrial, or IG land, this is our heaviest industrial used land. This is that land that we only have 6 acres of available land available. This column here, if you see my cursor, is the existing allowable uses. CUP is a conditional use permit. So if you do a community assembly, you can do community assembly with the heaviest industrial area by conditional use permit. And then you go down the column here and you can see how each of these uses are allowed within the heaviest industrial uses. Some are permitted by right. If it says permitted, that means it's allowable by right. There is no real review of that use within that general industrial park. So the changes that staff is recommending is the proposed column here. So in the heaviest industrial area, we are proposing to not allow, we're saying not permitted, all of these uses as they currently are allowed either through a conditional use permit or permitted. So it's a pretty hard line in the heaviest industrial lands, but we feel that approach is necessary given the very limited available land that we have in that heaviest industrial zone area. The second is IL, which is our light industrial, which makes up of that currently 120 acres or 86 acres of available land. Now, again, the existing column going down how land is allowed to be used currently, conditional use permits, permitted use, and then non-permitted. And then what's interesting is currently medical office and clinics are not allowed in the light industrial areas. So staff is recommending within the light industrial area, not to permit community assembly, not to permit conditional use permits with recreational indoor uses, not allowing a new home improvement center, a large retail home improvement center in the light industrial area, and then allowing and expanding the use of medical office and clinics and those types of medical use in the light industrial area. Under 20,000 square feet would be permitted by right, and anything over 20,000 square feet would be allowed with a conditional use permit. And the reason we limited it, or we kind of put a governor on it, is we didn't want an intensification of the medical office or the clinics within the industrial area. And what we typically see is most medical office or clinics or healthcare are using about 2,500 to 3,000 square feet within a much larger building within the existing space. So these are the staff recommended zoning code changes within the IG space and the IL light industrial. So really limiting the community assembly and the commercial recreational indoor uses, the home improvement center, and then expanding the use for medical office and clinics. Now there are other industrial land designations within the city of Morgan Hill, commercial industrial, industrial office, and then campus industrial. But the lands within this zoning code, I mean, we're down to like a few acres of this land. So we're not really recommending any significant zoning changes here, other than allowing the medical office and clinics. And some land could potentially be converted to commercial industrial or campus industrial. So we are looking at just expanding the medical office and clinic uses within that zoning code. Currently, they're allowed by an administrative use permit, which allows the planning director to authorize that use within that space. But essentially, we're saying just allow it by right. So our schedule for implementation is we've been doing business outreach with our community, business and community outreach. We included information about the industrial land preservation and optimization policy and the industrial ordinance in our newsletter. We are sending out a postcard to all landowners and tenants and users and the commercial real estate industry. There is emails going out to all the businesses within Morgan Hill. We're doing this meeting with the Chamber of Commerce, and then later this month, we're doing a town hall meeting as well. We will go to the Planning Commission with our recommendations in February and the City Council in March. And hopefully the zoning code changes that they approve or they review will be approved and implemented shortly thereafter, so they can implement the policy and the zoning code changes in February and March. And then as it relates to the industrial ordinance, changing that urgency ordinance into a ballot measure. So the city would vote at the city council meeting in March to place that industrial ordinance on the ballot and put it on the ballot in November. And then we would expect the Morgan Hill Responsible Growth Coalition to remove their initiative from the November ballot, since the City Council took action to place the collaborative solution ballot measure on the ballot. And then you have an election in November 8th, 2022. So that is our industrial preservation policy and approach that we've been undertaking, and we're looking for your comments and questions.
Thank you, Matt. So questions. Raise your hand if you've got a question for Matt and the city.
Right, John has a question.
Okay, John.
Thank you, Rick. Mostly comment. Yes, please. Thank you. Awesome. That's and I'm really speaking, not primarily in my role as the school board president, but my long interest in this topic. I was looking in my notes back in 2015. I did a presentation to this group on the importance of industrial land and job land presentation. Former mayor and former council member Carr will remember, on behalf of the chamber, I strongly argued against the M-West land conversion along Cochrane. We lost that battle back then, but many of those conversations, turned into the economic development blueprint, which then led to this work today. And I just want to say thank you. I fully agree with, having been following this topic for, I feel like I'm getting old, 7 years plus now, and done the analysis. I completely agree with and support your conclusions and proposed actions, and anything the chamber or others can do to support making this policy, I think is very important. So no questions, just well done and thank you.
Thanks, John. I would be remiss if I did not give kudos to the city staff who have done all the hard lift prior to now, especially John Lang with the ULI and the SWIDA, and Edith Ramirez, and all the policy work that's been done to date, Jennifer Carmen in the planning department, city attorney, city manager. They've all done a lot of work. I'm here just trying to bring it all together and move it forward.
Any other questions? Larry?
Thanks, Rick. Yeah, I'll take an opportunity. Matt, first, thank you so much. And to your last comments, absolutely. Lot of work obviously has gone into this, and I really want to applaud the outreach that has gone on with this to reach out to folks, to seek outside experts, to seek folks in the industry and get their thoughts on how to move forward with a few things. It's interesting, and I think applauding that you commented on the demand for ready-to-use industrial space has grown dramatically in Morgan Hill. That's what people are looking for. That is a night and day change from not very long ago in Morgan Hill. The idea of anyone ever building something that was spec in Morgan Hill it just wasn't going to happen in Morgan Hill not very long ago. So, we should applaud the things that have gone on to create that, and at the same time recognize what that also brings in potential impacts. And so I think those are where we need to spend a little bit of time, and you've done that in this already. I'm always troubled, Matt, when we talk about industrial, that those of us on this call and the participants that are listening in as well pay attention to these things, and we may all have in our head that a definition of industrial, but for a lot of people, industrial, we picture smokestacks and dirty things and low-paying wages and assembly lines. How do we do a better job of defining what industrial means in Silicon Valley and for Morgan Hill?
Yeah, I think it's a fair question. It's a land use designation, and it doesn't necessarily describe what's happening within that land. or within the buildings. And if you've had the benefit, Larry, as a former elected official, to probably tour many of our employers. I'll give the example of where Rick Kent just recently retired from Paramount. It's in an industrial zoned park. It's an industrial user, but they are doing lots of things in there, but it's not an industrial smokestack use. So it's a medical technology company. They're doing R&D, they're doing innovation, they're doing manufacturing, they're doing research. So you're right, the industrial land nomenclature doesn't necessarily fit the uses. I'm not sure I can go back in history and change that definition, Larry. It's a zoning code designation that's used by cities around the country.
Right.
And, I was in the city of San Jose when they were doing their industrial preservation policy as well. And really we're talking about, it's about employment lands. And the better definition really is about employment lands. And maybe we should talk about it differently and just talk about, employment land and creating employment lands that create high quality jobs. So maybe we need to talk about it a little bit differently. But it is a land use designation that's used just globally. But for the sake of Morgan Hill, we can continue to use the word and insert and use interchangeably employment lands.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Matt. Clearly I understand the word industrial is going to be in the general plan, and that's an accepted use. I think, we're still small enough that talking about a specific place like Paramount makes sense to folks. Defining when you talk about general commercial versus light commercial, give us an example. We'll know what it is immediately. But again, I think the Paramount is a great example. Commercial zoning that we may think about a bad connotation to commercial, but then you talk about that's a high-tech medical manufacturing that is good jobs that we want in Morgan Hill. And so, I think you're hitting it right on the head, Matt.
Yeah, and I think, Larry, too, I don't want to, from an economic development standpoint, the heaviest users to that IG land, it's limited land, and the users in there, we call them, it's the heaviest industrial or the dirtiest users. But every city needs those types of industrial lands as well, because those users are usually business to business employers who have good paying jobs. And it could be the concrete manufacturer, who's creating concrete so you can go build your buildings, or the machine shop who's doing, assembly for Paramount, who's down the street. So it's usually a business to business user. And you want those type of lands available as well. And, although we call it the heaviest users, those are employment lands too.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, with the council looking at and adopting a climate action plan, having some of those B2B users in town means that those more industrial uses aren't driving long distances to get to Morgan Hill. And I think it matches up pretty well with the climate action plan to say that, that cement truck is starting from Morgan Hill and going to Morgan Hill instead of driving long distances. I wanted to just comment briefly, two other quick things. When you talk about the number of years, Matt, of land that we have left for these kinds of things, my recollection is that those numbers of years change dramatically by just one building. The example, the old Alien Technologies, when that was empty and sitting on the books, we had 100 years, or so I'm going to use a number that is not accurate, but we had like 100 years of industrial land available, or industrial buildings available, because that one building was empty. And then when it got leased, we got down to 3 instantly with one lease. And so again, because we're still small enough of a community, I think it's important that when we talk about years, 19 to whatever the year was, sounds like a lot of industrial space, but it can disappear overnight with one building being leased. And so I think it's important to make sure that not only community, but decision makers understand those things as well. And then Matt, if you could just talk.
To that point, Larry, our vacancy rate is less than 3%. It's probably lower than that at this point. And we will probably get closer to that 19-year number in the next year because we're seeing multiple projects being planned at the moment, and we expect them to be permitted in construction by end of 2022.
And those build the 19?
I'm sorry?
So those that are planned, when those go into construction, those build out to the 19 years?
We're gonna move from that 95 closer to the 19 sooner than later.
Okay, I gotcha.
With available land,
yeah. Okay. And Matt, can you talk real briefly about, you talked about looking at commercial lands today and rezoning them to industrial as sort of a way of, putting a loggerhead or preemptive strike on someone who may want to take commercial and turn it into residential. Is it harder to convert industrial to residential?
Say that again. Is it harder to?
Yeah.
Is it harder? So the conversation was that there are people that are looking, and the state is promoting underused commercial lands today and converting them to residential. And I guess the way I understood your presentation, you want to look at underutilized commercial lands today and convert them to industrial. One of the reasons, multiple reasons, but one of them being to sort of a preemptive strike from it becoming residential. Is it that it's harder to convert industrial to residential, or are we just much more likely to get an industrial use on industrial land than commercial today?
I think the Office of Economic Development would fight tooth and nail to prevent any conversion of industrial land to residential. It's a completely incompatible use. We have business, it's interesting, in Morgan Hill, we actually have our business parks are surrounded by residential. That's unusual. But we would fight tooth and nail to prevent any type of conversion, especially under this policy, and prohibit it, prohibit those type of conversions to residential.
If I can jump in, good morning, everyone. Edith Ramirez. So Larry, to answer your question, is all about the market. It's all about the price and value of those lands and policies that the city may or may not have. In the city of Morgan Hill, we had a robust inventory of industrial, right? And we've seen the conversion and the decay of that land. Today, what we have is a robust inventory of commercial lands and legislation that is almost getting to the place of to the finish line with the state that would allow commercial lands to go residential by right. And there's been several of those bills that have made it very close. And we think it's a matter of time before those bills actually make it to allow for that creation. So for us, we're very concerned about the loss of that employment land and that revenue land. Because once the state allows it, then that will be very quick. It will go. Sure. So the question right now, the interesting exercise that we're trying to explore is, what is it that we as the city can do to incentivize those property owners to move from commercial to industrial? In the past, that wouldn't have happened because the market was not supportive of industrial in Morgan Hill. But today, the market has changed.
Right.
Thank you, Matt. Sorry for interrupting.
No, thank you. Great answers. Appreciate it.
Okay, I think Steve Levy had his hand up, but I don't see him. Is he still on? Okay, then John Horner, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. A quick follow-up, great discussion. The communications part that Larry highlighted, is very important, and I really encourage Matt and Edith that you follow through with updating your presentation and focus on employment lands as something that the public can understand. And also on the years, let's stop talking about years with the public for the very reason that it is such a noisy signal. It doesn't communicate what we think it communicates. So both the industrial designation and the years, those are very planner speak that's common in that world. But when we're talking to civilians or even the rest of us here, it took me a couple of years to get my head around what that meant when I was paying a lot of attention to it. So I know, when you're working in government, same thing in schools, right? We want to talk about the LCAP. What the bleep is an LCAP, right? Well, I know what that means, but not 1 in 100 parents understands it. So really want to highlight what Larry brought up about how to communicate. And then on the what does industrial mean? You can imagine a series of little video tours of local businesses is like, did you know what's in Morgan Hill? Go do a 3-minute video of what they'll let you see of what's inside Pyramid or in Ritsu, or, pick all these companies, because folks in the community have no idea what's going on right under their nose, and that will help as well in kind of employment in Morgan Hill. What does that look like, and where does it happen? That could be really interesting, and that's something that the chamber could do. You could start with chamber members as a little added benefit, but go out beyond that, and just most companies like that, and they're looking for employees, right? But nobody knows that these great jobs are right in their backyard either. So that could be a communications piece that could be really helpful. Thanks.
John, don't steal my thunder from my economic development marketing communication strategies.
No, everything I know I learned from you, Matt. It's really all you, and I'm sorry for any stepping on toes.
It's all good. Teamwork.
Okay, any other questions for the city, for Matt or the city? Yes, Nick.
Matt, I just have a quick question. And first, thank you for the presentation. It was well packaged. It really speaks to both policy as well as an execution and the consequences to each one of these decisions that are going to be made. Is it possible to go ahead and share the presentation so we can then put it on our websites? There's a tremendous amount of I think due diligence and discovery that needs to take place, and there's a lot on those slides. So if we could help kind of share that to the community, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, let me just make a couple edits to add the word employment a few more times, and get you that final version of the PowerPoint. I also want to note that we have put up a website on the city's website. Brittany's done a great job of populating a website that talks about the policy, the timeline, and the approach, and gives you a little bit more detail, kind of in the background, in the history. So there's a website, if you were to go on the city's website and search Industrial Preservation and Optimization Policy, there's a great website up.
Right. And Rick, I see Ray's hand still.
Yes, Ray, you have a question.
Yes, good morning. And Matt, very good presentation. I think there's some good data in there and explanation of some policies. The theme here is about economic development. What about some of the existing properties here that are in downtown that certainly can be moved along? Specifically, let's say the hotel or the old El Toro. What is happening with those specific properties that fit into the context of your presentation this morning?
Ray, thanks for the question. So this is a little bit off topic of industrial preservation, but everything's on the table. So we continue to work with the owner of the current hotel that's downtown that's unfinished, trying to identify sources of funding, and it's a priority for the city. A lot of it is in the hands of the private sector and the hospitality financing that's happening right now. We know it's of interest of the community to finish that project, and it's the best interest of the community to finish that project. So I think we're continuing to be focused on that. And we think things will continue to improve as we move through 2022. As you know, we are not through this pandemic. We're actually going through another huge wave that has a lot of the markets really skittish. So we think things will improve in 2022 and definitely, hopefully, into 2023. As it relates to the El Toro property, we've met with a property owner. We have talked about potential development plans, potential users for that site. And again, it's a little bit out of the hands of the city. We can facilitate conversations and introductions and make encourage things to happen. And we're hopeful that we'll see some movement in some very near term.
Some of us are getting pretty impatient, and I think I don't want to use the term eminent domain, but some completely watered down version of that, because all in line with the content of what you just described seems to fit with some of the stuff that we're talking about here. And I think, in terms of jobs, in terms of increased revenue, I think would be completely beneficial for the entire picture of what Morgan Hill sees as its vision to move forward. And so that's sort of, my perspective. I got a lot more details that I want to chat with you about, Matt, and specifically some of these areas that I think could help out, at least what I think is aligned with the Morgan Hill vision.
And I look forward to our meeting that we have on the books, I think, next week.
Yep.
Right? Yep.
Perfect.
Okay, any other questions for Matt? So Matt, any update on the Butterfield Trammell Crow development? Any tenants yet, or any tentative folks?
I can't tell you any of that.
Okay, I gotta ask.
I will tell you this. There's a lot of interest. They did have an item go to the Planning Commission on Tuesday night. That was their signs, their building signs. So their monument signs, their sign program went through the Planning Commission. It was at least an initial hearing. And we're in constant contact with those folks. There's interest. And there's interest in other properties in Morgan Hill and additional spec development. So very positive.
Good to hear. So anything else for Matt? Okay, then why don't we, let's see, we've got a few people that might make some updates. John Horner, I know the school district is certainly jumping through hoops with kids coming back from the holidays. My wife works for the school district, and I know they're kind of have their hair on fire. How are things going?
Thank you, Rick, and please thank your wife on behalf of myself and everybody, all the trustees. Yeah, I shared with Nick yesterday a copy of the presentation from our recent school board meeting that it's a public document. Anybody that'd like to see that, we don't have time to go through it now, but I'll try and summarize. Kind of the top line thing is everyone involved is doing everything possible to keep schools open. The great fear out there is, OMG, you're not going to send everybody home. But the, what it takes to do that is Herculean, and really the level of stress on everybody that works at the schools, that goes to school as a student, families, is really off the charts. So my first message is please maintain as much grace with one another as possible as we deal with this. So that's just, first point is everybody's working hard, and it is really hard, and we're doing everything we can to keep schools open. So that's, the contextual statement. Beyond that, the state CDPH keeps updating guidelines. We got new guidelines dropped last night that we are trying to understand how to implement. Kind of big picture wise, they're moving fortunately away from asking schools to do contact tracing, because we are now, we have, for numerical context, in December, our highest week ever had 23 adults and or students out of our almost 9,000 people test positive. And now I can't actually give you an accurate number with all the rapid tests and at-home tests we're doing. I mean, it's hundreds per day, compared to an old peak of 23. So just, we're at 10 to 20x the number of people testing positive. Fortunately, those that are vaccinated, I know we have somebody on this call that has a child at home, right? It's like child feels fine, but tested positive. So, we're for everyone that's gotten vaccinated, we're mostly in a new place where the risk is low, but we're also trying to minimize the rapidity of this spread. So it's a tough time. We've spent well over $500,000 upgrading our ventilation systems. We're spending more on that. We just authorized using some of our COVID relief funds to buy as a district another $300,000 worth of rapid tests, even though you hear the state and the feds are sending tests out. Well, if anybody's tried to get tested lately, you may have noticed how hard they are actually to come by. So it was sort of a bitter pill to swallow to spend $300,000 of school district money on that, but we're doing what we have to do to try and provide as much safety and security. But basically the strategy is, if you're positive, please stay home, whether you're a student or and if you're sick, again, the old kind of pre-pandemic rules of the road were, tough people, smart people, no matter how you feel, you go to work, you go to school. Well, now it's like, if you're not, if you think you have a cold or gosh, I am having a bad allergies day, please stay home and get tested, but let's not keep spreading these things any more rapidly than they're already spreading. So that's kind of a rambling contextual response. I'm happy to answer any questions that people have about specifics.
So any questions for John?
So Nick, if there's no questions for John, I did see two people that were listed as attendees that had questions. Alex, if you want to go ahead and ask your question first, and then we'll go to Shannon.
Actually, I was just trying to get on as a panelist, and I've been listening on and off. I've been having issues on this end, so I just wanted to, I enjoyed listening in the bits I could hear from Matt's presentation. So I'm here now. Maybe it's better you don't see me, who knows?
I think there's a recording Lori is making available for those that didn't quite get the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah. And Shannon, did you have a question?
Yeah, hi everyone. Not so much a question, but just comments. Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. It was great to see the proposed columns right there lined up to the current status. So thank you for laying those out so well. And yeah, definitely pleased to see all of those proposals. Also, I just wanted to echo what John said much more towards the beginning of this, but just a great kudos for the outreach materials that are being conducted and going out. I think, yeah, as much outreach that we can do to everyone is wonderful. So thank you for doing that. And then, yeah, just the last comment. Thanks to Larry for bringing up the reduction in GHG with having employment nearby where people live. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. So any other updates we might have here? How about Alex, open space?
Well, I wish this meeting came after our board meeting, which is tonight, after which I think I'll have a lot of stuff to respond to, but that's timing. We are, one of the things that is coming up is on our agenda is the 140 acres that are 129 acres near Bailey Road and Santa Teresa that was going to be a warehouse. And we are looking for ways to keep everybody happy, if you will, by development rights perhaps from the owners. And one of the things on our horizon might be the possibility of a solar farm up there. So that's in the works. Probably a ways out. Other than that, nothing from an open space to report. A lot of activity.
Sounds like you froze up on us.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if no other updates or any other questions, we will give you a half an hour back for your day. And thank you very much for attending. And we will be sending out future agendas for the Economic Development Committee as we move forward here. And thanks a lot for attending.
Okay.
I think you have a couple more people with their hands up on.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't see them.
I'm getting over here.
Yeah, this has been in and out. Something's in the air.
Okay, John McKay, you're on.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Great reporting. Thank you very much, Matt. I've been lurking, I guess. Didn't really want to say anything about what I was hearing, so I'm moving past your presentation to, do you have any updates on the opening of the Alara wine tasting room? That Alara wine tasting room is kind of I won't say it's the culmination, but it's actually a great success because that's something that many of us in tourism have been pushing for the last 9 years. 2013, that was one of the key things that came out of the community forum on tourism, and we're about to get it. Any updates on when they're going to open? What's going on with that?
I don't have an update. I haven't checked in with them since the end of last year. So good reminder. I'll check in with them.
Okay, great.
Nothing being held up on the city side though.
Okay, great. I've had some conversations with them, and people don't seem to understand how don't always understand how the process works. So anyway, thank you very much for that. And then there's also the new space, which is going to be an Italian deli. Any updates on when that might be opening? The one with I forget his name now. The old La Nina Perdita space.
Yeah, we Brittany and I met with the owners and the chef, and Brittany, remind me what their target date was. Maybe you can jump in and remind me, but they're working diligently and looking at like early spring, I think.
I thought it was early spring as well.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. And I see Joe has his hand up.
I do, and I just wanted to help Matt a little bit. I believe the Planning Commission approved the master sign program for Trammell Crow Butterfield.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. And again, thank you everybody for attending. Have a great day. Happy New Year, and we will see you soon.